So as I stated, this is going to be a rule-based chapter. That means when we talk about these rules, you need to understand this is something you have to know. The very first thing is going to be talking about zero exponents, and zero exponents are going to be something that you have to know when we get to the test. They actually make your life really easy, because zero exponents are really easy to solve. So let's go through and talk about this. So any non-zero number, that means, guys, you can't have 0 raised to 0 power, that's a different thing. But any non-zero number raised to the 0 power equals 1. Period. The end. It's just 1. Okay? Now, we need to show you why. You need to understand the concept because you're going to see it within problems as well. So 3 to the 0 is always going to equal 1. That's just the rule. Well, let's show you where that comes from. Think about this, guys. If you had 3 squared over 3 squared, because you're going to get problems that look like this. Okay? You're going to have a situation where you have two numbers that have what we call like bases, and we'll get to a rule for this in a little bit, but when you have like bases, you are going to subtract their exponents. So you would be subtracting 2 minus 2, which would give you 3 to the, guys, 2 minus 2 would put you at 3 to the 0, which is equal to, as we said, 3 to the 0 is equal to 1. Let's also think about it like this, guys. What's 3 squared? 9, because 3 times 3 is 9. And 3 squared would also be 9. And guys, what's 9 over 9? 1. So it's the same concept, just instead of working it out that way, you're dealing with the exponents, which we're going to be dealing with lots of exponents. That's all this chapter is. It's about exponents. So you've got to be able to deal with this rule. Again, this is the first rule that I'm giving you, that anything raised to the 0 power is equal to 1. So guys, what's 47 to the 0 power? 1. What's negative 6 to the 0 power? Guys, what is it? 1. It's just 1. It doesn't matter if it's positive, negative. It's anything raised to the 0 power is 1. So 12.98 to the 0 power is still going to be 1. That's it. Anything raised to the 0 power is 1. Alright. Questions, concerns, anything before we move on? That's just a straightforward rule. You got to know it. That's all there is. Okay. Again, rule-based chapter. That's one of the rules. That's the first one you should have down. Anything raises 0 power is 1. Okay, here's the second rule. We're going to talk about basic idea behind negative exponents. So, when you deal with negative exponents, you are going to have any non-zero number, guys. Again, we're not talking about 0 raised to anything other than 0 raised to a negative power equals. And this is how we're going to show it. And let's start with a positive one first. Let's see if we remember this. Guys, what does 3 squared actually mean? 3 times 3. Good. 3 times 3, which would be putting you at 9. Okay? 3 to the negative 2 is a whole nother ball game. We're going to be dealing with that negative power and making it move to a positive power. Okay? Anytime you have a negative power, you are going to move it to the other side of the fraction. I'll show you what that means, guys. Every whole number is really over what? 1. Every time, guys, every whole number is over 1. So whenever we have a problem like this, we're going to start by putting a line, putting a 1 underneath it. That 3 to the negative 2, in order to change that power to a positive power, is going to move to the opposite side of the fraction. So this 3 to the negative 2 is going to move down here, and instead of being 3 to the negative 2, it's now going to be 3 to the positive 2. Now, if I don't have anything left up top, what do I put as a placeholder? 1. Thanks, good try though. 1. And it puts it at 1 over, guys, what is 3 squared? You already did that up here. 9. So, guys, anytime you have a negative exponent, it's going to move it to the opposite side. I can't say it's always going to move to the bottom, because it's not. Sometimes they're going to move from the bottom to the top. So wherever the negative exponent is, it's going to move to the opposite side of where it is in the fraction. So let's show you what we mean, guys. Here's some examples of negative exponents. We draw a line, we put a fraction bar, we put a 1 underneath it. If there's not one already, if there's not a fraction, you got to make one. It's going to have lots of fractions in it. Okay, we're going to take and we are going to put our 28 on the bottom because it was originally on the top. It's now going to be on the bottom. And instead of being a -3, it's now going to be raised to the +3. Since we don't have anything on top, we put a placeholder of 1. Now, this is where you got to know how to type this in on the calculator. So grab your calculators. I'm going to actually write it out so that we know what it is. So you would type 2, 8. You're going to hit the power button, guys. What does the power button look like? Y to the what? X. It's that little Y to the X button. We've used it already this year, but let's make sure you remember what it looks like. Y to the X. The power would be 3, so you type 3, and then you hit equals. That's going to make it 1 over, it's a big number. What is it? 52?
Yeah.
Okay. 21,952. Perfect. Okay. So on this next one, we've got this number that's got a -4 power on it. We're going to move this entire number to the opposite side of where it is now. It is a -5. It's going to move to the bottom. It's still going to be a -5. The number sign does not change, guys. Just because you move a number doesn't change it to a positive. What changes is the exponent sign. The exponent is now going to be a +4. Put a placeholder of 1, and then we grab our calculators and we work this one out again. Alright? Oops, sorry guys. So let's work this out on the calculator. Again, we're going to type it. It would be on your calculator 5, then hit the negative key, which is that plus minus. And then you're going to type in there that power button, and then the 4, and then equals. Alright? What's that give you? What was it? 625. I apologize. I heard the 6, but I couldn't hear the rest of it. 625. Perfect. Awesome. Okay, last one. We've got a decimal. Still going to have it set with a fraction. You've got to move it to the opposite side. Don't have a panic attack. It's okay to have a decimal and a fraction. We will just simplify it out if we need to as we go forward. Okay. So from there, we put the 1 underneath it. We draw a new fraction bar. We do the same thing every time, guys. You draw 1 underneath it, you draw a fraction bar. Okay, we move that 6.2 to the bottom, but we have it as a +2 exponent instead of a negative now. We grab our calculators and we're going to type 6.2 power button squared equals. Hold on, let me write it up here just so we can have it in the notes if you want to go back and look at it. 6, the decimal point, 2, right? Power button 2 equals, and you should end up at what? 38.4? Okay, perfect. 38.44? Okay, there you go. Now, eventually, we would learn how to get rid of the decimals on the bottom of this fraction. We'll deal with that. We're just not there yet. We're worried about the rules for exponents right now. We'll get to that. But eventually you would learn not to leave decimals on the bottom of a fraction or in a fraction. But right now, we're mainly worried about just can you set it up with the negative exponent and deal with it. Anything on that rule before we move to the problems for this? Okay, the problems for simplifying. Okay, so here we go. The next section looks like this. So when you simplify an algebraic expression, the biggest thing is to get it into what we call simplest form. Just like you introduce a fraction and get it in simplest form, it's the same idea. The way that you tell this is that you have powers with variable bases are written only one time and only have positive exponents. Guys, listen to me. That means I'm not going to have an m on the top and an m on the bottom. They've got to only have one m in the problem. I'm not going to have like 5 on top and 25 on the bottom because those numbers are not reduced. I've got to simplify it. I also don't have any negative exponents. If you have negative exponents, it is not simplified. So that would probably be like something I'd highlight right here, that it has only positive exponents. If you want to simplify it, it's not going to have negatives in it. Your answers are not going to have negative exponents in them. There's only one exception to that. It has to do with scientific notation and writing things using that. We'll talk about that later on. Okay, so let's start with this first one. If we want to put this in simplest form, okay, it's called simplifying that exponential expression. We want to put it in simplest form. We're going to start by putting a fraction bar underneath it and putting a 1. We're going to draw a new fraction bar. Everything's about putting it in fraction, putting things where they go. Okay, 5 is a regular number. You have been dealing with 5 all your life. Don't start doing weird things to it because we started doing exponents. 5 is just going to stay right here. It is going to be 5. It's it. The a has a positive exponent. It is going to stay on the top. You're going to keep it as a to the third. That's it. The b, however, has a negative exponent. It cannot stay in that spot. Instead of being on the top, it needs to move to the bottom, and the exponent is going to become what? Positive. Good, positive. It's going to be positive 2. Nice. Right. So the same thing holds true if you already start with a fraction. Oh, guys, let's just make sure you're clear on this. How do I know I'm done? Because I have no like bases and I don't have any negative exponents. That's how I know I'm done. Okay, let's go to this next one. Now it already starts as a fraction, so I don't need to make it one. I draw a new fraction bar. Okay, now the 1, I'm not going to write a 1 in front of something until I get to the end to see if I need a placeholder, because the 1 would simplify out anyway. So I'm going to start with my variable right here. This is x to the negative 5th. I'm going to move it to the top because right now it's on the bottom and it's negative. I'm going to make it x to the positive 5th. And since I don't have anything on the bottom, what do I put there? 1. A placeholder of 1. Guys, it's always a placeholder of 1. When you don't have something, put a placeholder of 1. Now, do we leave any fractions where they have 1 on the bottom? Ever? No. So we would reduce it down and just make it x to the 5th. X to the 5th. Okay. So we've got some problems to do for this. Let's work through these. First of all, this is not a fraction, so we're going to put a fraction bar. We're going to put a 1 underneath it. We're going to draw a new fraction bar. That new fraction bar is going to have that 4 stay in front. That 4 is just a regular old 4. It's not moving around because of anything. It doesn't have an exponent on it. Nothing to do. The b is a regular old b. Guys, what exponent is actually on that b? What exponent is on any variable when it is by itself? 1. Just like there's a 1 in front of it and there's a 1 underneath it. We just don't write all that because that would be a lot to write every time you wrote a variable. So every time you see an exponent that is by itself, it is always going to have a variable itself. It will always have an exponent of 1. We just don't write it. And then the c is negative. It's going to need to move to the bottom. It's going to have to become c to the 3rd. All right, I'm done because I don't have any like bases, no negative exponents. We're done. Yep. Oh, that's okay. Okay, the next one, we draw our new fraction bar. Does the 2 go anywhere? Does it stay on top or move? It's going to stay on top. That a has got a negative exponent. It's going to move from the bottom and it's going to move up to the top. It's going to become a to the 3rd. Since we don't have anything on the bottom, it's going to need a placeholder of 1. And then when you reduce that, it's going to reduce down to 2a to the 3rd. Again, guys, we don't leave fractions over 1. If you have one that's over 1, you're going to have to simplify it down. Okay. Last one of these before we move on to evaluating problems. Okay. Guys, when you have 2 different variables, go in alphabetical order. Listen to me. Make your life easy so you don't have to do it later. If you have more than one variable, start with the one that comes first in the alphabet. The m is going to come first in the alphabet. I'm going to leave the m squared on the bottom because it is positive. Since the n has a negative exponent, I'm going to move it to the bottom. That's going to change from a negative exponent of 5 to a positive exponent of 5. Do you see that because I did that, they're in alphabetical order? Okay. And then you're going to have a placeholder on top of 1. Placeholder on top of 1. Right. Anybody have any questions? Now, y'all are acting like this is going very well. Does anybody have any concerns so far? That's good, but I get a little nervous. Okay. So then our last thing is going to be, oh no, we've got two more. We've got to evaluate, and then we've got to deal with the negative exponent writing, the stuff that's going to lead us into scientific notation. So let's deal with evaluating first. So here we go. We are going to evaluate each expression for these values. These values are going to be n equals -2 and w equals 5. Guys, before we do anything, you need to simplify the problem before you plug things in. Listen to me. Your life will be 100 times easier if you listen to what I'm saying. Simplify the problem first, just like we did on the other stuff. So, first things first. Before I do anything, I'm going to draw a fraction bar here, and I'm going to put a 1. Here we go. That n comes first alphabetically. I'm going to move it to the bottom. I'm going to make it n to the 4th. The w, guys, w to the 0. What is w to the 0 actually equal to? 1. So what's the only thing left on top? 1. That's it. That is going to be a much easier problem to plug into than the other one. Okay, so let's plug it in. It'd be 1 over, what is n? -2. So -2 to the 4th. Okay, guys. Grab your calculators. Let's see if we can type this. So it'd be 2 negative power button 4 equals. I'll say it again. 2 negative power button 4 equals. What does that give you? 16? There you go. 1 over 16 is our answer. Okay. For the next one, we're going to start right here. It's already a fraction, so we don't need to worry about that. We're going to start alphabetically. The n's come first. So I'm going to start with this one. Since it's a negative, I'm going to move it to the bottom and make it n. Guys, I don't write n to the first. I write n. That is it. Just n. We don't ever put a 1 when we have a variable. It's like putting a 1 in front. We don't do that. So it's going to be n. And then the w squared is already positive, so we're going to leave it on the bottom. And then we'll put a placeholder of 1 on top. Once we get it simplified, which I don't have any like bases, I don't have any negative exponents, so I'm simplified, I'm going to plug in the numbers. It's going to be 1 over, n is -2, so it's going to be -2 times w, which is 5 squared. Now guys, you got to do this math correctly, so be careful. Listen to me. Your calculator will take care of the order if you type it, but if you don't have a calculator on this section, you cannot do -2 times 5 and then square the answer. That's not how it works. The power comes first. So it's like 5 squared times -2. So your answer would be 1 over what? -50. There you go. Again, if you type it on your calculator, it will do that order of operations for you. But you've also got to know on the non-calculator today what to do. Okay, on this next one, when you set this up, guys, n to the 0 automatically cancels out. We're going to put a 1 in that spot. That means that's going to be 1 over w to the 6th. That's going to be a larger number because anything to the 6th power is getting big. So it's going to be 1 over, what is w? 5. So 5 to the 6th. Farthest I can get it without calculators, 4, that's 125. What's w to the 6th, 5 to the 6th, guys? 625? Perfect. 15,625. Everybody get the same thing? Everybody's okay? Okay. Okay, last one of the evaluating problems. Again, we're going to take and put a fraction bar. We're going to start with the first variable. The n is a positive exponent. We're not going to do anything to it. It's going to stay on the bottom. It's just going to be n. The w has a negative exponent. It's going to move to the opposite side. Instead of being w to the negative first, it's now going to be w to the first, which is written just w. Nothing else, just w. Okay? Now that you have it simplified, you'll plug in the numbers. W is going to be 5 over n, which is going to be negative 2. And can you simplify 5 over negative 2? Doesn't simplify, doesn't divide anymore. That's all you got. Okay. Anybody have concerns, questions, anything about it? Okay, guys. So from here, you're going to take this and we're going to go to the last section. Is it still in the front for you? Are we still good? Okay. So this last section is going to be a little bit different. This is going to lead us into scientific notation. That's why we're doing this. That's why they make you write it this way. I'm just telling you why we're doing this. But it's a little bit different because they're asking you to write these powers based on a negative exponent. Okay, that's different. Our goal when we simplify is to get rid of negative exponents. Now you're supposed to write these in terms of a negative exponent. Okay, so when you look at these, you've got 1 over 10. Guys, what power is 10 really to? 10 to the what? 1. It's not usually there. We're going to put it there just to talk about it and talk about what it really is. Okay? And then if I take and move that to the top and I want to make it into a negative exponent, it's going to move to the top and become 10 to the negative 1 over 1. Which, guys, anything over 1 just reduces to that, so it's just going to be 10 to the negative 1. Let's show you how this works when you have something that's not actually just 10. And we want it to be in the base 10 because they want it to be based on the power of 10. Every number is going to be based on a power of 10. So it's going to be equal to 1 over 10 to the what? Got to figure out what 10 to the what it is. Well, guys, how many zeros does it have? So it's 10 to the 4th. It's really easy to figure out. Which means when we move it to the top, it's going to be 10 to the negative 4 over 1, which is just going to equal 10 to the negative 4. Guys, you'll get to where you can do these without all those steps because it's straightforward. So like on the next one, it's got 2 zeros. So this would be 10 to the what for my answer? Negative what? This one. You were doing this one. Negative 2. Again, the process is 1 over 10 to the second. Move it up to the top. It'd be 10 to the negative 2 over 1, which is 10 to the negative 2.
Yep.
You have to do what you did for 15 for 16.
Again, you should learn to where you can get to this point, where you can go straight to the answer. Okay? Okay, for the next one, again, without doing all the steps, that's going to make it 10 to the negative what? I think that's the one you were doing. 10 to the negative 7, because there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 zeros. Guys, however many zeros, that's the power. Change it to negative, you got your answer. 10 to the negative 7. Does anybody have any questions? Okay, guys, so let's go from here and go ahead and get your